Saturday evening turned out to be cold. Emily shivered as she stepped into the entrance of the peeling panel apartment building where she and Dave had been renting a flat for the past 6 months. It smelled of dampness, cats, and something sour. The neighbor from the 5th floor had spilled his beer on the stairs again. Damn it! Emily muttered quietly as the light in the entrance went out. She pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, and continued up to the 3rd floor. The studio greeted her with its familiar smell of mold. The black spots of fungus in the corner of the bathroom kept spreading, no matter how much Emily scrubbed them with bleach. Dave wasn't home. He had stayed late again at his promising job as a sales manager at the car dealership. Although Emily suspected that, more likely, he was sitting in a bar with his friends, bragging about the next almost sold cars. She threw her bag onto the bed and went to the window. The glass fogged up from the temperature difference. Emily traced her finger through the condensation, drawing a little house with a chimney and smoke, just like she had drawn as a child, a symbol of comfort and safety, both of which she sorely lacked now. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Emily jumped and looked at the screen. "Mom, hi, Mom," she replied tiredly. "Emily, are you home?" Her mother's voice sounded unusually anxious. "Yes, I just got back from work. Your father and I want to drop by. We need to talk." Emily tensed. Her parents rarely came without warning, especially in the evening. "Did something happen?" "Everything's fine. Just make some tea. We'll be there in half an hour." Emily rushed around the apartment, trying to make it look somewhat decent. She made the bed, put the scattered things in the closet, wiped the table. She couldn't hide the mold in the bathroom, so she just closed the door, put on the kettle, and took out the cookies she had bought at the supermarket yesterday, the only treat she could offer her parents. The doorbell rang exactly 30 minutes later. Her parents stood on the doorstep, Betty and Charles Cooper. Her mother, as always elegant, even in a simple coat, immediately hugged her daughter. Her father looked more serious than usual. "Come in." Emily stepped back, letting her parents into the tiny hallway. Her father frowned when he noticed a mold stain appearing on the wallpaper in the corridor. Her mother cast a worried glance at Emily but said nothing. "Where's Dave?" her father asked, walking into the room. "At work," Emily replied automatically. "Or with friends?" "I'm not sure." Her parents exchanged a look. Emily noticed. "All right, spill it. What's going on?" she said nervously, pouring tea into the cups. Her father sat at the table, placing his hands in front of him. His palms were large, with prominent veins, the hands of a man who had built a business from scratch. "Emily, your mother and I have made a decision," he began. "We thought long and hard and decided that you've suffered enough in this." He gestured around the room. "In this dump." "Dad, we're managing," Emily tried to defend. "You're not managing at all," her mother interjected gently. "We can see it. Look at yourself, you've lost weight, there are dark circles under your eyes. The mold, the neighbors. We're giving you money for an apartment," her father said firmly. "$1 million. That should be enough for a decent place." Emily froze, not lifting the cup to her lips. $1 million. She would only see such an amount if she worked at her bank for another 10 years. "Dad, that's too much," she whispered. "For our only daughter, it's just right." Her father took an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "Here's the bank statement. The money has already been transferred to your account." Emily took the envelope with trembling hands and opened it. The bank statement showed the amount, $1 million. Transfer from Charles Cooper. Purpose, for his daughter to buy a home. Tears streamed down her face. Emily covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Her mother immediately came over and hugged her. "Sweetheart, what's wrong? This is a good thing." Emily couldn't speak, overwhelmed with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you." At that moment, a key turned in the lock. The door swung open, and Dave appeared in the doorway, flushed, eyes sparkling, smelling of beer and cigarettes. "Oh, in-laws have arrived," he announced loudly, swaying. "What brings you here?" Emily quickly wiped her tears. "Our parents came. We have news. Hope it's good news?" He plopped down on a chair, grinning widely. "Lately, there hasn't been much of that." "Very good," Charles replied calmly. "Betty and I decided to help you with housing. We're giving you money to buy an apartment." Dave immediately perked up, as if sobered. "Seriously? How much?" "1 million," Emily answered, watching her husband's reaction. Dave whistled. "Wow, 1 million." He jumped up and hugged his father-in-law. "Charles, you're amazing. I knew you'd help us." Emily noticed her father tense at the embrace, but he restrained himself. "The money is already in Emily's account," he said dryly. "You need to start looking at options. I already know what we need." Dave paced around the room, gesturing excitedly. "A 2-bedroom in a new building, with developer-finished interiors. I've been scouting residential complexes for a while. There are great options in the city center, close to the metro, good infrastructure." Emily looked at her husband and barely recognized him. Where had the gloomy Dave gone, the one who just yesterday complained that they'd never escape rental apartments? Now he literally glowed with enthusiasm, making plans, talking about neighborhoods and layouts like a real estate expert. When her parents left, Dave immediately opened his laptop and dove into apartment listings. Emily sat beside him, still not fully processing what had just happened. "Look, this one is just amazing." Dave pointed at the photos of a bright apartment with panoramic windows. 2 bedrooms, 65 square meters, and only $800,000. We'd even have money left for furniture. "It's beautiful," Emily agreed. "But let's not rush. We need to check everything carefully." "What's there to check?" Dave waved her off. "We're going to see it tomorrow. I'll take the day off, call my mom, she knows real estate." "What does your mom have to do with this?" Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" "She'll help us. She has an experienced eye, will notice if something's wrong, and help with the documents." Emily pressed her lips together. Dolores, Dave's mother, had worked as an accountant and considered herself an expert in all things real estate. Yet she had spent her whole life in an old 2-bedroom apartment and had never bought a property herself. "I think we can manage on our own," Emily said cautiously. "We can hire a realtor." "Why pay a realtor when my mom will check everything for free?" Dave protested. "Nonsense. I'll call her tomorrow." Emily sighed. Arguing with Dave when he had made up his mind was useless, especially when it came to his mother. Dolores had an inexplicable influence over her son. One call from her, and plans changed, promises were forgotten, decisions canceled. That night, Emily couldn't sleep for a long time. Dave snored lightly beside her, exhausted from alcohol and sudden happiness. She stared at the ceiling, where gray streaks of dampness were visible in the streetlight, thinking about the future, the new apartment, how their life would change. One thing she knew, everything had to be done right, so the million from her parents wouldn't become a stumbling block in their family. She had no idea then that this money wouldn't save their marriage, on the contrary, it would lead to its end. And that the apartment they dreamed of would not become a fortress but a battlefield for their last fight. The next 2 weeks flew by in a frenzy. Dave took charge of the apartment hunt and, to give him credit, approached it seriously. He called agencies, monitored websites, scheduled viewings. Emily, busy with work, could only join him in the evenings and on weekends. Dolores, as Dave promised, actively got involved in the process. She attended every viewing, scrutinizing the walls, checking the faucets, tapping the partitions, and giving her expert opinion, which Dave treated as gospel. The linoleum here is poorly laid. See the bubbles? His mother-in-law pursed her lips. And the windows face northeast. It will be cold. The bathroom tiles are cheap. They'll crack within a year. No, not an option. The kitchen is combined with the living room? That's a disaster. All the smells will settle on the sofa. At first, Emily tried to object, pointing out the positives of the apartments, but she quickly realized that she couldn't stand against the mother-plus-son team. Dave looked at his mother with adoring eyes, agreeing with every word she said. By the fifth viewing, Emily had had enough. "Dave, can I talk to you for a minute?" She pulled her husband aside while Dolores was busy criticizing the hallway storage system. "I think we should decide for ourselves which apartment suits us." "We are deciding," Dave frowned. "No. Your mom is deciding." Emily tried to speak quietly. "She's already rejected 4 great options because of minor flaws," Dave objected. "Mom is just helping us avoid a mistake." "Dave, every apartment has flaws. But the advantages matter more to us: location, layout, condition of the building." "Exactly. And Mom is pointing out what's wrong with the buildings. We can't search forever for the perfect one. We have to choose something." "Emily, we're talking about $8 million. Dave raised his voice. "You can't spend that kind of money on the first apartment you see. But we're not looking at the first one, we're carefully selecting options." "Dave, come here," Dolores called. "There's a problem with the outlets, only 3 in the kitchen. Where will you plug in your appliances?" Dave immediately forgot about his conversation with his wife and ran to his mother. Emily was left standing alone in a stranger's living room, feeling like an outsider in the process of choosing her own home. In the end, they found an apartment. And, surprisingly, Dolores approved it. It was a 2-bedroom apartment in a new residential complex, fresh renovation, spacious rooms, large windows, modern layout. Price, $760,000. "I'll take it," Dave announced to the realtor as soon as they stepped inside. "This is exactly what we need." Emily couldn't disagree. The apartment was indeed excellent: a spacious living room with panoramic windows overlooking a green courtyard, a comfortable bedroom with a niche for a walk-in closet, and a functional kitchen where one could place both a dining table and a bar counter. The building's entrance was clean, with a reception area and modern elevators. "Finally, a decent home for my son," Dolores remarked with satisfaction as they left the building. "Now we can think about grandchildren." Emily choked. "We're not planning children yet. First, we need to settle in and buy furniture." Of course, her mother-in-law patted her shoulder with a patronizing smile. "Settle in first, but then get to it. In a place like this, it would be a sin not to have children." Emily remained silent. She didn't want to start that conversation now, especially in front of the realtor, who was already pulling out the documents to finalize the deal. On the day of signing, Dave was busy, some important client at the car dealership who couldn't be missed. Emily called her father and asked him to go with her. "Of course, Emily. I was going to suggest it myself. The documents need to be carefully checked." They met at the developer's office, a modest 2-story building on the first line of a business center. Her father, as always neat and in a strict suit, commanded respect just by his presence. The realtor, seeing him, immediately became more serious and attentive. "Are the documents in order?" Charles asked, extending his hand. "Yes, everything is ready." The realtor handed over a folder with the papers. The draft contract, the extract from the property registry, the apartment's technical passport. Her father carefully examined each document, making notes in his notebook. Emily waited patiently. She trusted her father in such matters. He always understood legal details better than she did. "There are no encumbrances listed here," her father noted, flipping through the contract. "But the registry extract shows information about a lien." The realtor tensed noticeably. That's a technical error. The lien was cleared a month ago. Then we need an updated extract, Charles said firmly. We will not sign the contract until we are sure the apartment is clear. The realtor tried to argue but quickly realized that this man wouldn't be swayed. He left, promising to return with new documents. Dad, do you think something's wrong? Emily asked quietly. I don't know, sweetheart. The father tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the table, but it's better to be safe than sorry. He paused and continued. By the way, I wanted to talk to you about the apartment and whose name it should be in. Emily looked at her father questioningly. I think it's better to put it in my name, he said after a pause. In your name? Emily was surprised. But Dave and I are going to live there. Exactly because of that, her father lowered his voice. Emily, I see how Dave is approaching this purchase. He already considers the apartment his own, brags to his friends, makes plans. But the money came from your mother and me, and this is not jointly acquired property. You think that, Emily didn't finish her sentence, but her father understood. I'm not predicting the future, he said calmly, but it's better to be cautious. If we put it in my name, later, once you're fully settled, we can transfer it to you. For now, let it stay like this. Emily hesitated. On one hand, her father was saying reasonable things. On the other, it looked like a lack of trust in Dave and their marriage. What am I supposed to tell Dave? She asked. Tell him it was my request. I want to manage my money this way. After all, it's true. At that moment, the realtor returned with a new statement showing that the encumbrances were no longer listed. Her father carefully studied the document, then nodded. Everything is in order now. We can sign. When it came time to list the buyer, Emily gave her father's name. The realtor was surprised but didn't object. The client is always right, especially a client with $1 million in hand. That evening, back home, Emily didn't know how to tell Dave the news. She delayed the moment, talking about the document signing process, checking the paperwork, and the key handover schedule. But eventually, she had to tell the truth. Dave, there's something you need to know, she began, trying to keep calm. The apartment is in my father's name. Dave froze, holding a cup of coffee. What do you mean in your father's name? He asked, as if he didn't understand. Why not ours? It was his request. He said he would transfer it to me later, once we were fully settled. So he doesn't trust me? Dave put the cup on the table with such force that the coffee spilled. He thinks I'm after his money? It's not about that, Emily tried to explain. It's just legally safer this way. The money came from him. And so what? We're married. Dave raised his voice. Everything bought during a marriage is joint property. But this is a gift from my parents, Emily said quietly. It's not jointly acquired. Wonderful. So I'll be living in an apartment that doesn't belong to me. Like a freeloader. Yeah, Emily was silent, unsure what to say. She understood her husband's resentment but deep down knew her father had acted correctly. I don't understand why you agreed to this, Dave continued, pacing the room. Don't you trust me either? It's not about trust, Emily said wearily. Dad meant well. For whom? For you? So that if something happens, I'm left with nothing? Dave, I wasn't thinking about that, I just agreed with his reasoning. What reasoning? Dave stopped abruptly. What did he say to you? Nothing special, Emily tried to smooth things over. He just said it would be safer legally. Safer for whom? Dave was relentless. For you and him? And I'm the extra one in this scheme? Dave's voice trembled. Emily felt tears welling up. The conversation was going completely differently than she had hoped. Dave, listen, she tried to take his hand, but he pulled away. It's temporary. Later, Dad will transfer the apartment to me, and we'll decide together what to do next. Wonderful. Meanwhile, we'll live in your daddy's apartment, as if I'm not a man capable of providing for a family. Nobody thinks that. Everybody thinks that. Dave nearly shouted. And my mother will be the first to find out that her son is a nobody living in his father-in-law's apartment. So that's what it is, Emily thought. The issue wasn't legal formalities. The issue was what Dolores would say. How she would look at her son, who had bragged about the apartment to her, only to find out he was just a tenant in someone else's property. Your mother doesn't need to know all the details, Emily said cautiously. We can just say we bought an apartment, and that's it. And lie to her? Dave objected. No way. I'm not going to deceive my own mother. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Where are you going? Emily followed him. I need some air. I have to think this through. The door slammed, and Emily was left alone in a rented apartment with black mold on the walls. She sat on the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. The $1 million that were supposed to bring happiness were already starting to turn into a problem. And Emily felt this was just the beginning. The move to the new apartment was scheduled for early May. Spring was warm, and Emily dreamed about how she and Dave would drink morning coffee on the balcony, admiring the green courtyard. But reality was far from the dream. Dave was still angry that the apartment was in his father-in-law's name. He didn't speak about it directly, but Emily felt his resentment in everything, in his short replies, in how he avoided conversations about their future home, and in his unwillingness to participate in choosing furniture and appliances. Don't you like this sofa? Emily asked, showing him a photo from a catalog. Choose whatever you want, Dave replied indifferently. It's your apartment. Our apartment, Emily corrected. We'll live there together. But the decision will be yours. Or your father's. After conversations like this, Emily felt drained. She understood her husband's resentment but didn't know how to ease it. She suggested talking to her father to speed up the transfer process, but Dave just waved her off. I don't need a favor from your father. Let everything stay as it is. The only person genuinely excited about the move was Dolores. Despite the fact that, contrary to threats, Dave had not told his mother the truth about the apartment's ownership, she actively involved herself in setting up the new home. Dave, I found curtains for the living room, she told him over the phone. Blue, patterned, to match your eyes. Emily, it's better to order the kitchen furniture from IKEA, she advised her daughter-in-law. They have discounts now, and the quality is decent. Emily gritted her teeth and silently accepted her mother-in-law's advice. Arguing was useless. Dolores would do things her way anyway, and Dave inevitably sided with his mother. A week before the move, Emily took time off to prepare the apartment. She hired a cleaning service, bought the necessary furniture, dishes, and textiles. Dave helped move things, but without much enthusiasm, as if performing a burdensome duty. On moving day, Emily woke up with the first rays of the sun. Her heart pounded with excitement. Finally, they would start a new life, in a clean, bright apartment, free of mold and noisy neighbors. Perhaps it would change her relationship with Dave, restoring the warmth that had gradually faded. Wake up, she shook her husband's shoulder. Today's our day. Dave blinked sleepily, then reluctantly sat up on the bed. Right the move. Aren't you happy? Emily frowned. Of course he was. Dave rubbed his face with his hands. He just hadn't slept enough. The movers were supposed to arrive at 10. Emily managed to make breakfast, pack the last things, and double-check that they hadn't forgotten anything important. Dave silently chewed a sandwich, buried in his phone. Who are you texting? Emily asked, peeking over his shoulder. Mom. Dave leaned back slightly. She's asking what time we'll be at the new place. She wants to come help. Emily sighed. The last thing she needed today was Dolores. Dave, maybe we should ask her to come tomorrow? Today will be chaotic with all the boxes. That's exactly why we need help, Dave cut in. Mom was going to bring the curtains she bought anyway. Emily bit her lip to keep from saying anything. She had already bought curtains, light linen ones, matching the wallpaper. But apparently, Dolores didn't like them. The movers arrived on time. The young couple didn't have many belongings, mostly clothes, appliances, and books. Emily decided not to move the bulkiest furniture. It wouldn't fit the new apartment's interior. Moreover, most of it had been bought second-hand and looked rather sad. When the last box was loaded into the truck, Emily cast a final glance at their rented hovel. Strangely, she felt no regret at all. That apartment had never been a home for her, only a temporary shelter. Ready to go? She took Dave's hand. He nodded and squeezed her fingers. For a moment, Emily saw a flicker of the tenderness that had once existed between them in his eyes. Maybe things could still get better. The drive to the new residential complex took about an hour. Emily watched houses, trees, and people rushing past the window and thought about how their life would change. No more having to scrimp on everything just to pay rent. No more fear of turning on the heater one extra time, worrying the electricity bill would skyrocket. They could invite friends over without feeling ashamed of chipped walls and creaky floors. "We're here," the driver announced, stopping at a modern residential complex. Dave paid the movers, and they began unloading. Emily took out the keys, brand new, shiny, with a keychain featuring the complex's logo. Her heart raced again. In the lobby, they were greeted by the concierge, an elderly man with a neatly trimmed gray beard. "Good afternoon. Are you the new tenants?" he asked warmly. "Yes, apartment 247, Emily replied. "Nice to meet you. I'm Mike, your concierge. If you need anything, just let me know." Emily smiled. Now that was service. In their previous building, the only concierge had been an alcoholic who, for a bottle of vodka, could watch over the apartment while you were away, which usually meant getting drunk there with friends. The apartment greeted them with the fresh smell of paint and cleanliness. Sunlight poured into the spacious living room through the panoramic windows. Emily couldn't hide her smile. This was exactly what she had dreamed of. "Dave, look how beautiful." She ran to the window. "You can see the whole courtyard, the playground, and even a bit of the park." Dave nodded, taking it all in. "Yeah, not bad." The movers started bringing in the boxes. Emily directed the process, indicating where each item should go. Dave helped with the heavier pieces. They were just unpacking kitchenware when there was a knock at the door. Emily opened it to find Dolores on the threshold, carrying huge bags and wearing a triumphant expression. "Finally!" her mother-in-law exclaimed as she entered the apartment. "I've been waiting for your arrival for 2 hours. I barely found this new building, the GPS went crazy, and I had to ask passers-by." "Hello, Dolores," Emily said politely. "Come in." "I already did." Her mother-in-law kicked off her shoes and strutted into the living room. "Let me look around." "Dave, where are you? Go on, give your mother a hug." Dave came out of the kitchen, drying his hands with a towel. "Hi, Mom. You're early? Early? It's almost 2 in the afternoon." Dolores set the bags on the floor. "I brought you housewarming gifts. Look." She began pulling out various items from the bags: thick blue curtains with intricate patterns, a set of kitchen towels, some figurines, and a wall clock shaped like a cat with a moving tail. "These are for the living room." She unfurled the curtains. "Beautiful, right? And the fabric is thick, the sun won't shine in your eyes." Emily looked at the heavy blue curtains in horror. They didn't fit at all with the light interior she had planned. "Dolores, that's very original," she began cautiously. But I've already bought curtains. Light, linen ones. Linen. Her mother-in-law pursed her lips. The see-through kind? No, those won't do. They offer no sun protection. These, now that's something else. Dave, do you like them? Dave nervously shifted his gaze from his mother to his wife. Mom, maybe we should settle in first, then decide on the curtains? Decide? Dolores looked surprised. I've already bought everything. And not just the curtains. Look at this. She pulled a small clay figurine from the second bag. It's for good luck in the new home. Put it in the hallway. The figurine looked like either a gnome or an old man with a disproportionately large head. He had a sinister grin and beady eyes looking in different directions. Thanks, Emily forced out, taking the creepy figure. Very unique. It's the guardian of the house, her mother-in-law explained proudly. It drives away evil spirits and brings prosperity. I specifically bought it at an esoteric shop. Emily nodded, mentally deciding that the figurine would go into the farthest drawer as soon as her mother-in-law left. If anything needed protection in their new home, it was from these so-called guardians. And here's something else. Dolores pulled a photo album out of the bag. This is the Miller family archive. It has everything, from great-grandfather Dave to his high school graduation. Hang it on the living room wall. Emily felt a chill. The last thing they needed in their living room was a Miller family shrine. Dolores, we don't really have that much space. There should always be space for family heirlooms, her mother-in-law cut her off. Dave, you don't mind having your ancestors' photos on the wall, do you? Of course not, Mom, Dave mumbled, avoiding his wife's gaze. It's important. The next 3 hours turned into a nightmare for Emily. Dolores bossed the movers around, directed where the furniture should go, criticized her daughter-in-law's purchases, and made her own changes to the apartment's layout. The sofa should go against the wall, not the window, she declared. And the TV should be opposite it, that way it's more comfortable to watch. Take that vase away, it doesn't match the wallpaper. Better put my souvenir, the one with the shells. The bed needs to face east, the energy flows better that way. Emily clenched her teeth and stayed silent. She saw how Dave, who had been keeping his distance from the decorating process, was now actively involved, but under his mother's guidance, not his wife's. By evening, the apartment looked like a strange mix of the modern minimalism Emily had planned and the tasteless eclecticism Dolores had brought in. The windows had both linen curtains and heavy blue drapes. Her mother-in-law insisted they needed both for different occasions. In the living room stood a shrine of Miller family photos, and in the hallway, like a sentinel, a sinister clay gnome. Well, now it actually looks like a home, Dolores concluded with satisfaction, surveying the results of her work. Tomorrow I'll come and we'll finish the kitchen. I'll bring my containers for grains, they're excellent, with airtight lids. Emily barely stifled a groan. Dolores, that's very kind of you, but we'll manage tomorrow ourselves, she said firmly. You probably have your own things to do. What could be more important than helping my son? Her mother-in-law asked in surprise. No, I'll definitely come. But now it's time for me to go. It's already late, and the subway is far. Dave offered to walk his mother to the bus stop. When the door closed behind them, Emily sank helplessly onto the sofa. Her head ached from her mother-in-law's commanding voice and the endless arguments about furniture placement. She looked around. Their new apartment, which was supposed to be the embodiment of her dream, had turned into a ridiculous mix of different styles and tastes. Instead of a light, airy space, there was a cluttered room with absurd details. Dave returned half an hour later. He looked tired but content. Mom's very happy for us, he said, sitting next to Emily. She says, the apartment is wonderful. No kidding, Emily couldn't resist. She practically decorated it herself. Dave frowned. What are you trying to say? That your mother completely redid everything I had planned. Emily couldn't hold back her emotions. Those awful curtains, the figurines, the photos on every wall. We don't live in the Miller family museum. So you think we should live in a faceless IKEA catalog apartment? Dave shot back. Without a single family photo, without coziness? What does coziness have to do with it? It's about your mother thinking this apartment is hers. She bosses around, telling us where to put things, how to live. She's just helping. Unlike your parents, who only gave money and didn't even come to see how you and your father spent it. Emily froze, stunned by his words. So that's what bothers you? She asked quietly. The money? What bothers me is that your parents control our lives through that money. Dave jumped up from the sofa. The apartment is in your father's name. You choose the furniture. You make all the decisions. And who am I? A houseguest? Nobody thinks of you that way. Emily exclaimed. This is our home. We make all the decisions together. Really? Dave gave a bitter smile. Then why do you resist everything my mother suggests? Why are your ideas more important? Because it's our apartment, not your mother's. Emily felt a wave of anger rising inside her. She doesn't even ask what we want. She just drags in her tasteless curtains and figurines and arranges them as if she were at home. Don't you dare speak like that about my mother. Dave raised his voice. She always wanted only the best for me. And that's why she bosses around in our apartment? That's why she plans to come every day and tell us how to live? She's just helping. And yes, she has the right to come whenever she wants. It's her son's home. This is our home, Dave. Mine and yours. Not your mother's. They stood facing each other, breathing heavily. The first evening in their new apartment, which should have been full of joy, had turned into yet another argument. You know what? Dave grabbed his jacket. I'm going for a walk, need to clear my head. Where are you going? It's late, Emily tried to stop him. I need to think. Don't wait for me, Dave said curtly. The door slammed, leaving Emily alone in the apartment, which with every passing minute felt less and less like home. She slowly sank onto the sofa and covered her face with her hands. What is happening to their marriage? Why is the money that was supposed to bring happiness only destroying their relationship? And how can they stop this process before it's too late? Looking at the Miller family photos arrogantly staring down at her from the wall, Emily suddenly realized, maybe it's already too late. Perhaps this million had not been a blessing, but a curse that was tearing their family apart from the inside. They had been preparing for the housewarming for a week. Emily desperately tried to restore the apartment to the look she had originally planned. She rearranged the furniture, removed some of Dolores's souvenirs, replaced the bulky blue curtains with her own light linen ones. She didn't dare remove all the Miller family photos, but she reduced the display to a few modestly framed pictures. Dave watched these adjustments with barely hidden irritation but didn't object outright. After their first argument in the new apartment, he had become even more distant. He came home late, often smelling of alcohol. When Emily asked questions, he gave monosyllabic answers. It was as if they were living parallel lives in the same space. But for the housewarming, Dave unexpectedly showed interest. He suggested inviting friends, parents, colleagues. Emily was delighted. Maybe this was a chance to mend their relationship. Maybe the celebration in their new apartment would help them feel like a family again. She made a guest list, her parents, a few close friends, a couple of colleagues from the bank. Dave added his friends and, of course, his mother. Emily ordered sushi and rolls from her favorite restaurant, bought expensive tableware and a tablecloth to set the table beautifully. Dave took care of the alcohol, personally selecting wine and cognac. The day of the housewarming arrived almost despite everything. Emily had been bustling around the apartment since morning, polishing already clean surfaces to a shine, arranging plates, laying out napkins. She hoped the celebration would ease the tension that had been building between her and Dave over the past week. "Are you sure we need this housewarming?" Dave asked lazily, stirring his coffee by the window. "Maybe we should postpone it." "Not everything's ready yet." "What exactly isn't ready?" Emily barely contained her irritation. "The furniture is in place, the renovations are done, the tableware is bought. Invitations were sent a week ago." Dave shrugged and stared out the window. He avoided direct eye contact, a sure sign his mind was elsewhere. "I was thinking maybe just close friends, no parents?" Emily froze, cloth in hand. "No parents? Are you joking? These are my parents who gave us this million. How could we not invite them?" "Exactly," Dave's voice grew harder. "I'm tired of your father looking at me like a freeloader, as if I'm not a man, as if I can't provide for the family. Nobody looks at you like that. Everyone does." Dave slammed his cup down. "You think I don't see those looks? Don't hear how they go quiet when I enter the room?" Emily took a deep breath. This conversation had been repeated dozens of times, always ending the same way, with hurt feelings and silence. "Fine," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "If you want, invite your friends separately, have a guys' night. But today we're having the official housewarming, and the parents are coming." Dave squinted, as if weighing whether to continue the argument, then waved his hand and left the room. "I'm going to the store for wine," he called from the hallway. "Shopping list on the fridge?" Emily asked. "Yes," Dave replied, and Emily felt a wave of irritation rise inside her again. "And don't forget the semi-sweet red for your mom." The door slammed a little louder than necessary. Left alone, Emily collapsed exhausted into a chair. When had everything started to go wrong? Just 3 months ago, they had been dreaming of their own home, making plans, imagining waking up in a bright bedroom and drinking coffee on the balcony. Now, every conversation had become a minefield. Every word could trigger an explosion. The $1 million gift, meant to make them happy, had instead become a constant reminder of the imbalance in their marriage, that Dave was not the provider and protector, just a guy lucky enough to have a wife with wealthy parents. Emily wanted to cry, but she held herself back. Today was a celebration. They had to look like a happy couple, at least for their guests. Emily's parents arrived first. Her father carried a huge bouquet of chrysanthemums, her mother a homemade cake. From the doorstep, they began admiring the apartment, even though they had seen it before. "What a bright living room you have!" Emily's mother exclaimed, clapping her hands. "And these linen curtains fit perfectly. Emily, you did a great job thinking of everything." "Dave and I chose them together," Emily lied, catching a grateful look from her husband. He brightened up, showing off the built-in cabinets and talking about the storage system he had designed himself. Sure, it was an exaggeration. The cabinets were standard from the developer, but Emily didn't correct him. Let him feel like the master, the manager of this space. Soon friends and colleagues arrived. Emily's friend Tiffany brought a handmade ceramic vase, her buddy Clint a box of premium liquor. The apartment filled with voices, laughter, the clinking of glasses. Emily almost believed that everything could work out, until the doorbell rang again. On the doorstep stood Dolores, in a new eggplant-colored suit, bright red lipstick on her thin lips, and holding a cake. "Finally," she announced, scanning the room. "I thought you'd forgotten me." "Not at all, Dolores," Emily forced a smile, taking the cake. "We were expecting you, Mom." Dave immediately appeared beside her, kissing his mother on both cheeks. "Come in, I'll show you everything." He led his mother through the apartment like a museum guide, proudly showing off every detail. Emily heard fragments of his narration, and here I decided to place a bookshelf for convenience. The ceilings are almost 3 meters. Can you imagine? I immediately knew this was our place. Great neighborhood, subway nearby, park 5 minutes away. Every word hit Emily like a slap. She knew she had to stay quiet, but inside she was boiling. Dave spoke as if he had earned this apartment himself, planned and organized everything, without a word about her parents' money, without a hint that the apartment was in her father's name. Such a nice neighborhood. Dolores supported him as they returned to the living room. My Dave has always known how to choose the best. Who did he get that from? Certainly not his father, who couldn't even hammer in 2 nails. She scanned the living room, lingering on the linen curtains. Only these curtains are kind of hospital-like. I told you, son, you should have hung my blue ones. They're both more practical and prettier. I chose these curtains. Emily couldn't hold back. They fit the interior perfectly and let in light. Of course, dear. Dolores patted her hand like a condescending teacher. You're so creative. But in everyday life, practicality is key. Don't worry, I'll teach you. Emily felt her eye twitch. She looked at Dave, hoping for support, but he pretended not to notice the conflict. Let's sit at the table, Emily suggested, trying to change the subject. Everyone's here, and the sushi is getting cold. Sushi? Dolores pursed her lips. Strange choice. I would have cooked a proper dinner, potatoes, meat, salads. Well, never mind, Emily's father said calmly from nearby, rolling his eyes but staying silent. He always tried to avoid conflicts, especially with Dolores. At the table, the atmosphere eased slightly. Dave, relaxed from wine, joked and laughed. Emily joined in, trying to ignore her mother-in-law's barbs. Friends shared news, colleagues recounted office stories. It seemed the celebration was going well. Then the toasts began. I want to raise a glass to my friend Dave. Clint stood, slightly swaying. For managing to provide a home for his family in these difficult times. Well done, man. I respect that. Dave beamed and raised his glass in return. Emily noticed her father tensing slightly. To the owners of this house, Tiffany's friends supported the toast. To their happiness and well-being. Dolores didn't stay out of it either. He's always been determined. He told me, Mom, I'll definitely buy an apartment so you'll have somewhere to stay when you visit. She laughed, clearly pleased with her own joke. Dave smiled too, though he glanced tensely around. And Emily is lucky to have such a husband, Dolores continued, clearly getting into her stride. Not every man these days can provide a family with a proper home. Well done, son. Now you can start thinking about grandchildren. She raised her glass, sweeping a triumphant gaze over everyone. Emily felt her chest tighten. Any moment now, she might lose control and say something she would later regret. Charles saved the moment. He rose from his seat, holding a glass of whiskey. I'd like to make a toast too. His voice was steady and calm. To the young couple, may there always be peace and harmony in this house, and may you never forget that the most important things are love and mutual respect. Everything else can be acquired. He glanced meaningfully at Dolores, and she fell silent for the first time all evening, blinking in confusion. Emily smiled gratefully at her father, hoping the crisis had passed. But her mother-in-law spoke again. By the way, Dave, how much did this apartment cost you? She gestured around the room. Probably no less than $1 million. About $1 million, Dave replied reluctantly, avoiding his wife's gaze. $1 million. Dolores gasped. And where did you get that kind of money? Last I checked, your dealership didn't pay all that generously. A hush fell over the room. Emily felt a chill. Here it was, the moment she had feared all evening. The truth was about to come out, and Dave would be humiliated in front of his mother and guests. A mortgage, of course, Dave muttered, blushing. And savings. Savings? Dolores squinted suspiciously. What savings? You spent every penny on your car and gadgets. Mom, not now. Dave was visibly nervous, fidgeting with a napkin. Why not now? Her mother-in-law persisted. I'm just curious how my son, who a year ago complained that he didn't have enough for rent, suddenly buys $1 million apartment. This isn't a joke. Emily saw Dave's face turn red and guests shifting awkwardly in their seats. Everyone sensed the celebration was on the brink of collapse. Maybe now isn't the best time? Emily's mother, Betty, intervened gently. Let's try the cake you brought. No, her mother-in-law cut in. I want to know the truth. Dave, did you take a huge loan, or God forbid, get involved in some shady business? Enough. Dave jumped up from the table. I'm sick of hearing this. I'm fed up with all the questions about money. Emily gasped. These were almost the same words he had used when he found out the apartment was in her father's name. Could he really be staging a scene in front of the guests? Dave, calm down. She tried to put her hand on his shoulder, but he brushed her off. I will not calm down, he shouted. I'm done. All of you, I'm done. Yes, he continued, voice trembling with anger. The apartment was bought with my father-in-law's money. Yes, Charles gave $1 million. Happy now, father-in-law? Now everyone knows I'm nothing. Just living in your apartment. Dolores went pale as a sheet, blinking rapidly as if she didn't understand what she'd heard. In your father-in-law's apartment? She whispered. So it's not your apartment? Technically, no, Dave said bitterly, smiling wryly. The apartment is in Charles's name. I'm just here on borrowed rights. He grabbed a bottle of wine, poured a full glass, and drank it in one gulp. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, unsure where to look. The silence became unbearable. Maybe we should leave? Tiffany suggested hesitantly. Stay? Dave waved his hand, spilling some wine. The party's in full swing. Let's drink to my generous father-in-law, who let us live in his apartment. Charles slowly rose from his seat. His face was calm, but anger shone in his eyes. Dave, you're behaving disgracefully, he said quietly. We gave you money not to listen to your tantrums. But for what, then? To make me feel worthless next to your daughter. Dave shouted. Stop it immediately. Emily stepped between her husband and her father. You're drunk and don't realize what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Dave pushed her aside. All these months, even your father humiliated me. Every time I wanted to make a decision about the apartment, you reminded me that your daddy provided the money. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. I always said this is our home. Yes. Then why is it in your father's name? Why did you choose the curtains, order the furniture? I couldn't even pick the wallpaper without your approval. Dolores suddenly snapped out of her stupor. She stood, clutching her handbag, and looked at her son with a contemptuous glare. So you're living in someone else's apartment, she hissed. All this theater, all these stories about how you chose and planned, it's all lies. Mom, I can explain. Don't bother. Her mother-in-law lifted her chin arrogantly. I thought my son was a real man, a provider, but you've just been freeloading off your rich father-in-law. Dave froze, as if slapped. He had expected understanding from his mother, sympathy, but not this humiliating contempt. So that's how it is, he said quietly. And you too. Dolores was about to leave, but at the door she turned and looked straight at Charles. So, your daughter married a pauper, and you decided to save them? How noble of you, I must say. Emily's father did not look away. We just wanted to help a young couple start life under normal conditions, he replied calmly. And the apartment is in my name because I decided so. It's my money, and I can use it as I see fit. Is that so? Dave suddenly exploded. Your money, your rules, and I'm supposed to be a grateful little puppy allowed to live in a nice kennel. He grabbed Dolores's handbag, then Charles's briefcase, and carried them to the door. Dave, what are you doing? Emily exclaimed in horror. Out of my house. He roared, not listening. Get the hell out with your handouts. Keep pushing, I'll divorce your daughter. Dolores watched the scene with devilish satisfaction. Finally, Dave had shown some backbone, put these upstarts with their money in their place. Emily's parents were silently gathering their things. Her mother was crying, her father holding her arm. At the door, he turned and looked directly at Dolores. The apartment is in my name, he said calmly. It's not jointly owned property. I persuaded my daughter to put it in my name, and it seems it wasn't for nothing. Dolores went as pale as chalk. The smile slid off her face like a mask. She finally realized that her son really was just living in someone else's apartment, and there would be no divorce and property division. She could no longer consider herself the mother of a successful man. The guests hurriedly said their goodbyes, trying to leave the battlefield as quickly as possible. Some muttered housewarming congratulations, others promised to call tomorrow. Within 5 minutes, only Emily, Dave, and his mother remained in the apartment. So, you knew all along, Dolores looked at her son with contempt. You knew you were living in someone else's apartment and kept silent. Pretended to be a successful man, boasting to your friends. Mom, that's not true. I didn't raise you to be a freeloader. She looked around the apartment with disgust. Better to live in a one-room apartment, but your own, earned with your own work. Dolores, Emily tried to intervene. This is our shared home. It doesn't matter whose name it's in. Silence. Her mother-in-law cut her off. It's all because of you. You've seduced my son, made him live on ready-made wealth, turned him into a kept man. That's not true. Emily protested. Dave stood silently. Dolores grabbed her coat. I no longer wish to remain in this house of shame. Dave, if you have even a drop of self-respect left, you'll leave with me. Emily looked at her husband. He stood, head down, clearly torn between his mother and wife, between his pride and the comfort this apartment provided. Dave, she approached him, taking his hand. Don't go. Let's talk. Everything can be solved. He looked up at her, eyes full of pain and humiliation. Solve it? How do you really expect me to live here after all this, knowing your father can kick me out at any moment? He would never do that. It was a gift for both of us. A gift with conditions, Dave said bitterly, smiling wryly. With a legal safeguard, so that a loser like me can't claim these square meters. Emily looked at her husband and slowly removed her wedding ring. At that moment, she realized their marriage was over. Not because of the money, not because of the apartment, but because Dave could not accept help without feeling humiliated, because his wounded pride was stronger than love. Tomorrow I'll file for divorce, she said quietly, and I'll forget this nightmare forever. Dave looked at the ring in her hand, and in his eyes flickered something like relief, as if he had been waiting for these words to free himself. Let's go, son. Dolores took him by the arm. You'll come back to my apartment. You'll always be welcome there. They left without looking back. Emily was left alone in the apartment that was supposed to become a family nest but had turned into a battlefield. She slowly sank onto the sofa and for the first time all evening allowed herself to cry. $1 million, such a huge sum. It was supposed to change their lives for the better, but instead, it destroyed everything they had. Shattered the fragile world of their family, exposed all the cracks in their relationship. Emily knew that tomorrow would bring a new day, that she would really file for divorce, return the apartment to her father, or buy it herself. After all, she had a good job at the bank and would start life anew, without Dave and his toxic mother. But tonight, in this endless housewarming evening, she just wanted to cry for lost dreams and unfulfilled hopes, for the million that was meant to be the foundation of happiness but had turned into the road to divorce.